Hey everyone, and thank you for joining us. It has been a crazy week in Texas, and we're gonna get to a lot of that because Texas is a mess. Matt was like a mess, um, and yeah. So you haven't heard from us. Last Tuesday, we put together pieces for a little episode of the podcast. So if you had missed the live broadcast, you get to hear a little bit of our live with Cody and Matt show that we're going to start doing once a week. We're going to do that once a week. But we put together a few of those pieces because Matt didn't have reliable electricity. And so we put that together. And then Thursday, we just didn't do it because Texas was still a mess. And so, yeah, that's craziness.
And Matt had
Um,
not slept in a week
yeah.
at that point.
And then I had other things going on this weekend. So first of all, I did want to start this episode of the podcast off by thanking Matt, as always. He's always there to listen to me. I wasn't really complaining, but I was sharing issues that were
You're
happening.
stressed.
I was very stressed. This is my happy
Very,
face and
very
my
stressed.
my work personality. But things are a little bit better today. My cat got really sick, and so it was kind of scary and sudden. And so we're dealing with that, and hopefully things will be looking up, but we'll see. And I'll talk about that more later. But Matt, thank you for being there for me to
You're welcome. Well, my cat
complain
had dealt
about
with the
or
same
complain about it.
issues, so I knew she was okay. It's one of those things. It looks really scary, and if you don't deal with it, it can become a problem. But you were dealing with it immediately, and there were some extra details I opted not to mention.
Withholding information.
Well, I thought it was the right thing to do. If you were not going to take her to the vet, I would say, okay, this is what really could happen, and you should take her to the vet. But that's never a conversation I would ever have to have with you. In fact, I think it would be the other way around of you telling me I need to take my pet to the vet first. And I'm pretty on it usually. But that was how the week finished. That was the
Yeah, like a whole lot of crazy.
I don't think I'd even slept hardly at all when we were having that conversation. And I kept rereading it to make sure I was reading it correctly because I was so tired that I didn't, you don't want to make sure you say the wrong thing or come off insensitive. I mean, I didn't want to come across the wrong way because I really do care. And I just hadn't slept at all.
I know. So yeah, I'll talk more about all of that at a later time. But Matt was dealing with a lot of stuff. We'll get to that, the main bulk of that. But y'all were able to get some haircuts done despite all of
We did it
the
ourselves.
yeah.
Yeah, last night. So we'd had enough of so throughout the week because we didn't have power intermittently. I would say in total maybe 3/4 to a day. We didn't, but it was inconsistent. It was not rolling at all. Like it just failed. So it would we would have it for 3 hours and be off for 5 or 6. So our house would go from 67 to 50 to, or probably low 50s, mid 50s when it would happen overnight. So you're layered up and under a couple blankets, and we're making sure we keep the cats warm and everything. And then the heat kicks on in your sleep or wherever you are, and you immediately start sweating because you're layers. And we still have some of our winter clothes from living up north.
Yeah.
So 5 days of being hot and cold, and I was pretty sure the boil water thing was coming. So we filled up a ton of our containers with as much water as possible. So we would have had probably 4 or 5 days worth of water if we needed it,
Yeah.
and for drinking and for the pets, because we only have 2 cats, so they're luckily don't go through as much water as we did when we had a dog.
Yeah. For sure.
My gosh, this all could have been so much worse at our house. So we were really fortunate. And then so when the boil water thing did come, we were already ahead of the game. So when you boil water, you have to boil it. You have to boil it for 1 to 3 minutes, and then you have to let it cool naturally. Move it to another container, and then boil something else. And you can only do that when you have power. So at that point, we hadn't lost power yet. So we're like, well, we've been really lucky. At this point, most of San Antonio is out, and for some reason, we still had it. And we're like, all right, well, let's just take advantage of this. So we charged everything we could. And then when the power started going out, we pretty much stopped sleeping. So when the power would go out, we would try to nap. And then as soon as it would come on, we would, strip down and try to get
Mhm.
comfortable again and run through the house, put everything back on charge. Because if it goes out again, it may not come back. You have no idea when it's coming back. And because every day the weather that was supposed to be clear became 3 days of freezing rain. Like Wednesday or Thursday, it was not supposed. There was nothing on the forecast Monday, Tuesday, and then it snowed, and then there was, and then it snowed all day.
I
So
mean,
Wednesday and Thursday were gross,
yeah.
and we know how to drive in ice and snow. So we also know that our current cars are not. My car's tires are probably fine for it, but it's rear wheel drive. So no, you don't. You either want front, four wheel, or all to drive in the snow for at best, if you can, if you have the option to.
Yeah.
And we have a Ford Escape that is front wheel drive, but I had an accident last month where some pavers fell off a truck, and I dodged most of them and the swerving vehicles, but I hit one of the pavers and bent a rim and blew a tire. So I didn't flip the truck, but I did blow a tire, and those tires were probably better rated for snow. So we couldn't go anywhere anyway because I had to put our stock tires or uh, original equipment tires on that
Yeah.
I still had, that I luckily still kept in the garage. So we did have them, but you can't really drive in any. You can drive in some rain, but there
Yeah.
was ice and snow. It was like a winter lasagna outside, and so we did not step out of the house. So we lost about half of our fridge and freezer. David several months ago had bought a backup gas burner that runs off little butane canisters that
Mhm.
he was doing some kind of project that he wanted to try, so he needed it. Luckily, he had it. So the one night, I think day 3 of this, we lit a couple candles and lanterns, and we still had water. So I washed everything I could, because you don't want stuff piling up in your kitchen during this, because it can get really gross really quick. And this is how you get sick. This is how you start finding infestations. Things can go really south really quick if you don't know what you're doing. So David's chopping vegetables by candlelight. We're washing everything we can, drying everything we can by lantern and candle.
I
And
mean, just if you're just hearing that, it sounds so romantic.
oh yeah, so romantic. I mean, it was funny because it was one of those like 3-wick candles from Bed Bath and Beyond, so it smelled like delicious. So you just, what's happening around us, and then it's like this real comforting, like vanilla cookie smell. So we chopped every vegetable we could, and that was going to go bad, or anything that was going to go bad, and made a giant stew out of it. And we had some. Whenever we don't finish chilies and stuff like that, we'll freeze it so we can have it another day, and we happened to have that. So we happened to have eaten that over the weekend. So we had a few things kind of there, like
Mhm.
unintentionally. I was expecting 48 hours of really bad weather. Then when the power started going out, I was like, oh, this is going to last longer than 48 hours. And then, of course, the news reports started coming in of there's fires breaking out. People are dying because their houses aren't insulated, and water is failing. And yeah, so we did not take any risks.
Yeah.
So we packed up everything. We put it at the back of the garage because it was the coldest place we could find. And I put what was left of our ice down at the base of a cooler. So the bottom half of the cooler survived. The top half of the cooler did not. But the refrigerated stuff did manage to stay cold. And our neighbor dropped off a care package because we weren't able to grocery shop last week either.
Yeah.
So for a week, all we ate was soup and like a bowl of cereal per day. And only because last Saturday I woke up and was like, we should go to Target. We should run to the store and just, extra this and extra that, just to have. And I'm really glad we did, because we were a week and a half behind on grocery shopping already when this happened. So we didn't really eat much through the whole week, and we were trying to conserve everything because we don't know how long this is going to last. So to point out the severity of the situation, another couple days of this, we would not have been okay. Another couple days, we're buying plane tickets, and us and our cats are flying out because we can't leave them here. They will die. They will literally die in the cold or lack of power, or they have an automatic feeder that would get them through maybe 4 days. So, and we had a half a tank of gas in each car. I am 857 miles from El Paso. That's the west side of Texas. So I am in the south, where if you look at a map, Texas is literally the size of Europe. I could drive for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles and not hit a state line, or somewhere else that is connected to the main power grids of the country,
Yeah.
that where we could fill up. And
Stay
and we'd
warm.
have to fill up at least one time, one and a
Yeah.
half times to get out of the state. And we've driven out of the state. We drove here. And so, I mean, it was very close to becoming severe. And even though the weather cleared on Friday, you don't really know what the severity of the damage is until supply lines start restoring. I'm from Ohio. We've done the blizzard thing, and I grew up in Florida as well. So Hurricane Charlie hit the week I went to college. It destroyed my town and Orlando. And it was a mess, a disaster, flood damage everywhere for the first year I lived there. But you just sort of deal with it.
Yeah.
But there's a difference in South Texas. North Texas can get all 4 seasons. South Texas, generally, we might get 1 or 2 days a year where it's like 20, but that's like 1 or 2 days a year. The rest of the time when it's cold, it can be 30, 35. It might flurry a little. I think in 2017, it snowed like 3 inches one night and it was gone by 10 a.m. the next day.
And I think also, like, I mean, where San Antonio is, there's even further South Texas, which again is hundreds of miles, that also got snow. We will come back and we're going to talk more specifically about kind of what Matt was dealing with and some of the causes that cause that for people across the state of Texas. That's coming up next.
To pick back up where we were. So, like I said, we were very, very, very fortunate, but because we didn't know how long things would last. And if you know that you're going to leave your house, you're not going to wait till all your resources are gone before you go. So we're starting to think, well, what's going to happen? What are supply lines looking like? Do we need to go? Do we need to stay? And everything is shut down. Everything's done. So luckily things have restored. We slipped into Target early Saturday to see kind of what the status of everything was. And our boil water advisory here in the south part of San Antonio popped out or came off yesterday around 11 in the morning. And then the north side of San Antonio is already restored. So things are improving rapidly, but there's a lot of people that lost power and that still don't have it because their house was damaged by their water lines rupturing. I'm sure if you've seen BuzzFeed or any of the news reports, it really does look like that. I think a 50 apartment building, like a building of a complex, collapsed because there wasn't enough. The firemen couldn't do anything about it. Houses have just been burning because they were frozen. The lines were frozen. And sometimes your lines freeze and other times they will completely rupture. So what you do is you leave water dripping. It keeps it just kind of moving so it doesn't become stagnant and freeze in the line. So what happens when water freezes? It expands. It blows pipes. Some of the houses here are very old. And it's hard to, so San Antonio is the 7th largest city in the country. It's hard, I know it might be hard to imagine like how such a huge city could have be that far behind, but it's also an older city. So there are historic areas. There are areas that don't have updated piping, and ours are underground in our neighborhood. Our house was built in 2016. So by sheer luck, it was not a skill on our part that we still had water. It was complete luck of construction because our construction method here was not normal. And we didn't plan that either. They just showed us how they built the house. And, I grew up in South Florida. Things aren't really, your pipes a lot of times are exposed. And even if they're not that far under to protect them.
In Texas, a lot of construction building, like pipes, you were seeing a lot of, like you were talking about, a lot of people's pipes bursting. But a lot of construction is done where pipes are built on the outside of homes, like outside walls.
It's not a big deal because even if it gets cold, it doesn't stay that way for an extreme. Our temperature, our winters can get cold and uncomfortable. So you might have 2 or 3 weeks where it's 35, 40 degrees and gray and rainy outside. And yes, to live in, that can be really miserable to go 3 or 4 weeks without seeing the sun. But that's not cold enough. Yeah, it's not cold enough to freeze your pipes and ruin your day. So what was happening here was the equipment that they used to switch around. They were saying that it was all frozen, so they couldn't even move it. So there was no rolling blackouts. I don't know if that was actually the intention or if it was just PR, but that didn't happen. So apparently we were minutes from, they shut down the power because we were minutes from frying our actual grid. So the Texas grid is separate from the east and west parts of the country because Texas is gonna Texas, y'all. And because of that, if they had shut down the grid, I think some 26 million people live here. It would have been like a Mad Max situation. So 26 million people here, it would have made Katrina look like nothing because the entire state would have I mean, the amount of destruction and death we would have seen would have been,
Yeah.
it would have been like historic war level amounts of death.
Well, and the thing, so since Texas has its own grid essentially, and it controls about 90% of Texas, so there's certain areas in the Panhandle and like certain parts in Western Texas, El Paso area, that are not served by the Texas grid. So the way it's set up, it's not an easy option to bring in electricity from the Western and Eastern grids. There's portions of that can happen because there are connections in Oklahoma, Louisiana, I believe, and then in Mexico. But the amount of electricity shared between those lines on a regular basis is not very much at all in the big picture of things. So the amount of electricity to come in, the system is not set up to do that. And I was seeing a lot of people, talking about that. And the Texas grid,
you guys were probably seeing more than we were because we couldn't. I was dependent on the news and Twitter, and so of course, and I knew we were okay, so we were focused on trying to find people that weren't okay and make sure, do you need a shower? Do you need food? Like, what do you need? And because, yeah, we were okay. We had some stuff. We were gonna be all right, but it was, I think, Thursday or Friday night before I actually sat down and ate. Like, our power came back Thursday night and stayed on. After that, it stayed on. But it wasn't until Saturday, I think, that we actually started like comfortably plugging a few things back in. And, just because even though the roads were clear, you can overwhelm a system and crash it again because you don't know. So we were like, well, we've been dealing with this thus far. If you saw my Twitter, I posted what I looked like Thursday morning versus what I looked like Saturday. After Saturday was right after I was sitting in the driveway waiting for David. He was, before we went to Target. So I drank what I needed and I ate what I barely needed. And of course, every time the power went off, we'd try to sleep. But as soon as it came on, we were up. And of course, we couldn't sleep anyway because something would flip on and scare us because, all the lights came on in the middle of the night once. And Luna was sleeping on her. They have a cat tower. She was sleeping on the top rung of it. And I guess the lights on our loft had gone off sometime earlier in the day and I forgot about it. And we had gone through we tried to remember to go and turn off everything we could. And because all sorts of things were malfunctioning because they were constantly getting turned off, turned on and off. So we had to properly shut down and reset a bunch of things. And it was really funny. So all the lights popped on and I heard the cats jump and I was like half asleep in bed and they popped on and I immediately get up and throw off my 4 blankets and I go out and Luna's eyes are like the size of dinner plates. She's not even moving. She's just laying on her side on the top of her tower. Like
what terrified. Is going on?
Like, what the hell is this?
I think that's one thing, that you were saying about not turning everything on at once. And a lot of that is to help the grid not be overwhelmed. And also because it is a slow process.
60s. We try to keep it as cool as possible. And so I really struggle. One of the reasons we moved to Texas was because I have a lot of problems with my hands and feet. Like when I get cold, I can hardly flex my hands at all. Like it's miserable. And I've lived with it for a very long time. But obviously I'm getting older. It's worse at 34 than it was at 30, than 25 and 20. So as it's gotten really cold, this whole week was a challenge, because once it gets that way, the only relief I have for it is to wrap it and let it warm up, put my hand between my thighs and let it warm up, or run it under warm water until the pain stops. And most of the time I can live with it. But when you're sitting here for an undetermined amount of time, you have to make a plan. So there was other things going on outside of this. And luckily, one of our neighbors on Thursday, she called my cell phone and she is like team mom. She's a retired school teacher. And she's like, "Oh, honey, you okay?" And, the attitude it takes to have taught, that it must have taken to teach 4th graders for 35 years. She's just never endingly positive and wonderful to us. And has been since the day we moved in. Well, she did almost call the police on us on the first night. She thought we were squatters in the house, but it's okay. We worked it out. But she dropped off a care package of random little things, and she used to take care of her mother, who had dementia, and she'd passed in 2020, and not COVID. She just kind of was able to pass peacefully at home. And but she had tons of things that she had bought because her mom liked certain things, so she would get them in bulk, so that to minimize the trips, to minimize leaving her mom alone for long periods of time. So she's like, I have tons of stuff that I will not touch because she didn't like them, but they were things that David or me, I have the weird taste. So she dropped off a couple things, and she dropped off a gallon bag of coffee for us. And I didn't think to ask what kind it was because it was just so nice of her to do it.
Yeah.
And I didn't think the kind of coffee that a teacher would drink to keep themselves energized for a day of fourth graders. Sir, I drank that coffee and I could have painted the house, resurfaced the road. I could have painted every house in the neighborhood in probably 3 hours. I was like,
Yeah.
whoa. So it was an experience. I also could not go get my meds, and my meds actually ran out Monday. So I was able to get them Sunday. We were finally able to drive over CVS because everything else had lines. We only popped over to Target to look at the situation to see okay, how bad is this?
Yeah.
And yeah, actually Friday afternoon, I guess CVS had opened in our town on Friday. When they called me, and the girl, the pharmacy tech, I felt bad. I'm sure she's exhausted, but she's like, you have meds here and they've been here for a week. I'm like, yeah, I haven't showered, left my house. I have no clothes because we hadn't done laundry either. Normally do laundry on the weekends, and we opted not to because we didn't know how severe it was going to be. And we're like, well, it's not, just in case. And because we thought 48 hours, we can wait. It's whatever. So it ended up being we're a week and a half behind on literally everything. So she's like, are you coming to get your meds? And I'm like, no, I'll be there probably Saturday or Sunday. I'm going to need a minute. And she's like, fine. I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm gross. But we were literally out of most of our clothes at that point. And I had showered once in a week. So I was, rocking day 4 hair and this before I shaved it.
Yeah.
And so was David, whose hair is twice as long as mine was.
Thankfully, you got the haircuts in yesterday.
Yeah, I cut his hair yesterday, and it looks, it was last night, and I think it looks pretty good. But
you said he kept moving though.
He kept
which you don't move.
No, don't move. He was moving to help me, but it was stop moving. I'll move myself. But yeah, so I would encourage everybody that if you know somebody that doesn't have water still or power, if their house is damaged, direct them either to ComaCast, to me, to the state website. There is tons of relief available. Tons of stores are doing lots of things to help. Lots of people are doing things to help. Any GoFundMe's that you know about, if you know they're legitimate, just send them to us. I don't have a problem retweeting that and signal boosting. I just want to make sure, we're retweeting legitimate ones, because sometimes people try to profit off of disasters and take away from people who really do need the help. So there are places, San Antonio is still doing bulk water distribution, where you bring your own containers, but up to 5 gallons per household at a time, that you can go get, and then that can be enough to have drinking water for a couple days, or however, depending on how many people are in your house.
Yeah.
And if you need power, now it is warming up. It's by Sunday and Monday, it was 70 again.
Y'all are gonna be 90s in a week.
Right, and trying to explain to people that this isn't about a little bit of winter. When we first moved here, I lived in PA for 6 years. I was so used to the cold again that even though my hands hurt, I know I'm not really cold. That the first year it was 40 degrees and I walked over to the mailbox and didn't even think about it,
Yeah, I mean,
you get used to it. But I've now lived here in Texas for 5 years. So there's people here that have never seen snow. They've never seen ice.
Yeah, I was going to say, when we're talking about we're going to talk about this in another episode about infrastructure and electric grid, water grid, and all of that's involved. But
I thought that was a really good. Cody texted me, I think Wednesday, what do you think about doing an infrastructure episode where we talk about how things work? And I've learned I don't really know how things work. I didn't know the Texas infrastructure was so frail. Most cities, yes, they're a bit outdated because they're huge cities.
Well,
you can't update a whole city in 6 months.
Yeah, I think there's also a lot of misconceptions about things, because I don't want to go too much, but Texas having its own grid is not necessarily a negative. There's other things around it that make it negative, because you look at California's infrastructure probably is equal to what Texas is, so we'll go into that in a future episode. but yeah, I thankfully, Matt,
I
you,
posted a before and after picture. I took it down yesterday because every time I saw it, I was like, ugh. I mean, I literally look resurrected. So on Thursday, I took a picture after I woke up and I'm dehydrated. I've been sweating and freezing for at that point a week. And then Thursday, before this all really got started, I got to the doctor's. It was 25 degrees outside then and pouring down rain. And I didn't want to move my doctor's appointment. So I was like, well, it's fine, whatever. It's not, nothing's frozen to the ground yet. Let's get this over with. And, it was not my best day at the doctor. And so there was that. And it just led right into the weekend. And still, we had a much better week than a lot of Texas because we have that experience of living in the north and with actual natural disasters. We are aware. And so, Texas, we don't have salt trucks here. Like, so
yeah.
up north, of course, you salt the roads. Your house is winterized. Like, I don't remember really losing power up north, except when a tree came down on a line one afternoon and took out power to the borough I lived in.
Yeah, and
But that was
like
it.
a lot of people might be surprised about that. But again, there's like financial
Right.
considerations done with that
Because why would
because
you keep it's only for a day or two a year usually, so you would not purchase enough salt trucks to plow and run a city for 48 hours. Like, that's ridiculous. It's
yeah,
quicker and easier to shut it down, everybody stay home, and
yeah,
it is always in the weather. We did know the weather was coming.
yeah.
We did know Sunday and Monday would be ugly. We all knew, but we did not expect 3 extra days of freezing rain and then a whole 4th day of snow. And then, of course, the power going out was the end of it. So, we've had, I think 30 plus people have died. People were dying in their homes of hypothermia. They were being found under blankets. A child died in Houston. There were several deaths
Yeah.
in Houston. And then, we talked about the apartment fire here. So there is a lot happening and a lot still happening because, it takes longer than 48 hours to recover from those things.
I think when we're talking about the scope of it and it being once in a generation, like the area where my family is, the amount of snow, ice, etc., that they've gotten in the last, basically, I guess this winter, it's the most since like the early 70s. So that's dozens and dozens
Right.
of
Now, our
years.
generation has lived through so many once in a lifetime events that I'm like, okay, I've had enough. Like, let's not now.
But that goes to the fluctuation
right.
of
So,
global warming.
a
But
lot
that's
of people don't
another.
understand that climate. We'll go into that later, but climate and weather are not the same thing. Like, they're in the same realm, but they do not mean they are not interchangeable. So, like Texas has a warm climate, but we had rough winter weather for a week. That's like the easiest way I can think
Yeah.
about it. So, but we are on the road to recovery. But like I said, if you see anything on Twitter, you see anything in the news redirecting or providing updates, because you guys are probably all seeing updates before we were. And at some point I just had to stop watching it because it's not helping. I'm literally sitting there freezing, trying to keep the cat warm and playing Free Cell on my cell phone. I'm really good at that game now. By the way, I've gotten really good at it in the last couple months. I'm like level 100 on it, by the way.
Didn't even know it went that far.
Yeah, me either.
As Matt was saying, you can message him at right there on the screen.
Yeah.
If you're listening to that podcast episode, though, it's I'm Poetic AF. I'm at Cody Rodriguez. So you can message us or whatever. As always, I'm glad you survived.
Yeah, Cody was like, "Are you okay?" I appreciate. I got so many text messages, Snapchats, direct messages, and I really appreciated them. I don't think you really realize the impact you have on people's lives. And I don't think I realized. I mean, I know, like, I play around on. I'm really playful on Twitter, but I don't really equate that to like more substantial connection than what it is, because you don't really know what the other people perceive that as, and I don't really focus on how other people perceive me, obviously based on how I write. But I got so many messages from so many people checking in on us, offering us help, and I really appreciated it. Now, nothing could have been delivered anyway unless you could literally, like, we're a paratrooper. But yeah. But everybody, it really was appreciated, and I really appreciated the offers to let David and myself and our cats come to you, and if we could have gotten there, it was getting close that we were going to be accepting those
You should
offers.
have just come here.
Oh yeah, because you locked me in your garage for 2 weeks to quarantine.
It's true. It's true. But remember,
But
we were delayed. We were delayed doing a live or something like 2 weeks ago, I think, and that was because I was knitting a scarf to send to my niece overnight to get it to Texas before this. It did make it. They did get to wear it, but it was so cold.
They were okay.
It was so cold. You couldn't play in the snow.
One of the things we were checking on is, we have other mutuals here, and you have people that you have to think we have an elderly population. People retire to the south, so it's very much, I know, are you okay? But is your family okay? Is your elderly parents that live in the city? Do you need me to go drop off something when the weather clears? As soon as it's clear, I got 2 hours. I can run out and drop off water and whatever. Do they need to come here and take a shower? I can wear a mask and let them go do their thing and drive them home, because hygiene is very important, and it's very easy to become sick in something like this. People become sick after the hurricanes and major natural disasters because they don't you're not really focused on having clean hair, when you've been through hell. It's true. But things like, old food or trash that you can't get rid of, it could become a source of a problem, and it's something that people don't think of. We couldn't even really get out the door. Like, our trash cans are around the side of the house. Our whole driveway was iced over. It is very easy to fall and hurt yourself. This is not the week to have an accident. So we piled up everything and we put it in the garage, because the garage was ice cold. And our bedroom is right above our garage. So we only slept in our bedroom when we had to. We napped on the couch. But David is 6'3" and I'm 5'10". We both cannot sleep on the couch, and we don't have an air mattress.
Yeah.
So, and we were trying to be in the same room because the cats would come sleep on us because they would get cold. So we would try to wrap them up with us to keep them warm. I mean, it made for really cute pictures, but it was actually, it's like, oh, this is super cute, but it's actually a serious situation.
Remember, it's just like Instagram. You can see it and it looks amazing, but the reality behind it is not there.
That's why I always post, I'm sorry to kill the moment for this picture, but this is what's really happening.
I never do that.
But yeah, that's it.
Again, remind you, if you need help, if you know someone who needs help, or you have an organization that is helping people, and you want us to put it out there into the world, you can message either of us. And yay, thank you for joining us again for this episode. And Matt, I'm glad that you made it through, and we're back on our regular schedule.